Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пихцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, critters. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 652 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russian attack collapses. Who would have
And
guessed?
of course, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, all good, man. Go right ahead.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And as we have heard, apparently a pretty decisive HIMARS strike in the northern area of Avdiivka has apparently shattered the Russian forces and made the attack in that area today pretty much collapse in the loss of several hundred Russian forces. We're going to be getting into all of that and, of course, everything else that we have, but I really want to quickly take y'all over into Ulan-Ude, near Lake Baikal, inside of Russia, because something very interesting has been happening behind the scenes, and it appears that it's finally making its way to the forefront here inside of eastern Russia. Many of y'all know that because Russia has had massive sanctions imposed on them throughout the war, they have been having some very hard times economically, not only that materially, being able to secure any kind of vital materials or resources that would keep Russian industry going. And this has specifically affected the aviation industry inside of Russia, which has been continuously getting in worse and worse shape as the war has kept going on. And of course, spare parts becoming fewer and fewer. A lot of aircraft are starting to fly with many things that could go wrong, and it appears that over Ulan-Ude, one of those incidents did happen as an aircraft was visibly seen practically falling apart after it caught on fire, and I'll show y'all a little video of that right here. When you see what appears to be the left engine having a flame out of some kind.
Ебать, смотрите, горит!
Why is this lady shocked? It's a Russian airplane. I mean, come on.
Самолет горит!
Oh my god! I live
Oh
in
my
Russia!
gosh, a Russian aircraft is falling apart. I could not believe my eyes.
You thought you were safe, but all of a sudden you woke up in Russia. That's her reaction. But the Tu-204 is actually a little bit of an interesting plane. Some of y'all will very easily be able to tell what this is inspired off of. Let me just show it to y'all real quick. I wonder where they got the inspiration for this little plane right here, because I swear it looks a lot like an A320 from Airbus.
It looks pretty close, I gotta say. Maybe a Boeing of some sort, though. It's a little bit long.
And a little long. I would say it looks a little bit, let me see if I can pull this up, like an A321. Let me go get a picture of that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it almost looks the same. There is the Tu-204. Here is an A321 from Airbus.
Pretty close, pretty close.
Very similar. I mean, that is shockingly similar how close the two look. Of course, the Russians have been trying to get into the aviation industry for a while. They've never really succeeded because regardless how much they try, none of these aircraft meet the safety regulations here in the Western world, so they never really get a lot of buyers outside of Russia. But nevertheless, it does appear that they're starting to run into even parts shortage issues for their own domestically made planes like Tu-204 right here, or the military version, which is the Tu-214, which you can see right there. They apparently had some enhancements added to the outside, but nevertheless, it doesn't look like it's doing that well for the Russians, at least as the war keeps going. It looks like the aviation industry may be falling apart at the seams. Of course, this is just a one-off video, but we'll be looking around and seeing if we can find any other videos or any other proof that the Russian aviation industry is practically coming to a stop due to a lack of spare parts, kind of like we're seeing in that clip right there. But moving on from that interesting news, it's time for us to get on into what was bizarre outside of Sevastopol. It appears that the Ukrainians have continuously tried to conduct port assaults on the port of Sevastopol, even as recently as today, just around 8 hours ago, as a Russian Mi-8 helicopter was seen trying to blow up one of the Ukrainian naval drones before it could make it into the port of Sevastopol itself. It was pretty wild to see, because if you look at it, I've never seen a Russian helicopter on a patrol trying to destroy a naval drone, but here's the clip. It starts after the Mi-8 has already fired off its rockets. We can see them detonating in the water. You see him firing at them again, and it appears that these fell incredibly short. It looks like our little kamikaze boat from the Ukrainians is way out there, where that small little white streak is. You see him firing again. And it looks like he's just swinging and missing. Well, you see these got a little close. As he's getting closer, it appears that he is getting a little bit more accurate. We now see him whip out the machine gun, and they're trying to shoot the drone boat. Those rounds are getting a little close, but doesn't look like anything's taking it out yet. We now see the helicopter chasing the kamikaze boat as it continues on. We can see the co-pilot, because the actual Mi-8s have a pilot, a co-pilot, and like a co-pilot or really a gunner that is able to operate the 12.7mm machine gun mounted inside of the nose of the helicopter. This isn't on every Mi-8, and you'll notice that a lot of Ukrainian Mi-8s do not have this machine gun mounted. They actually removed that from most Ukrainian Mi-8s, but some of the Russian ones still do have this forward machine gun on the helicopter. And we can see my guy walking it in from literally below the helicopter all the way out to the boat. What a way to walk in the shots. Look at this. How stupid. So now he's getting it on target with the kamikaze boat. And he's really laying it down, but it doesn't look like they're stopping the boat yet. And it looks like those shots might be all over the place. We now see the Mi-8 turning off. And it appears they're going to let that one go. I think it's not from a lack of trying. I think it's just because they suck at trying to destroy a kamikaze drone. But really interesting to see a video like this. We've never seen Mi-8s on any kind of a naval patrol before, and this adds a whole new depth of knowledge to Russian defenses around the port of Sevastopol. Apparently, of course, before the typhoon, and also I have to say this, everyone, I know this map looks weird. It's not the map we had yesterday. Apparently, Google updated overnight, and now they have this weird colored map where everything looks like it's a part of the ocean. Don't know why they did that, but moving on down into Sevastopol, we can see that apparently on top of the coastal defenses that they had, as well as the barriers to entry that they had to the port of Sevastopol, they now have Mi-8s that are conducting some patrols off of the coast and looking for any incoming kamikaze boats that may be around. So it's a little odd to see something like that. It's also adding a lot of extra information that we now know about what kind of coastal defenses the Russians really do have before a drone can get into Sevastopol. And it appears that it's a lot more difficult than we originally assumed for a Ukrainian kamikaze boat to get into the port, showing that when they do, it's either a massive amount of skill by the Ukrainian armed forces or it's a massive amount of incompetence from the Russians. Honestly, I feel like it's most likely a blend of the two. But moving on from that little interesting bit of news, and on into our next bit, we also got to hear that the Ukrainian air defense was once again very successful overnight, as they were able to shoot down some, let me make sure, 15 drones, 15 Shaheds, and that was it. That was really all that was launched into Ukraine overnight, but they were able to shoot down almost all of them from what I was able to find. Very good to see. Incredible to know that the Ukrainians were able to stop these Shahed attacks, as it's really the only way that the Russians have at this point to attack major Ukrainian infrastructure at a consistent rate. They ran out of most of their ballistic missiles a while ago, and we see them throw one or two of them at the Ukrainians every once in a while. But usually, if the Russians want to conduct any deep attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure or civilians any longer, it's done with the Shahed 136. And seeing that almost all of them, if not all of them, have been shot down overnight, it is showing that their attacks, once again, proved to be entirely unsuccessful. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our location unknowns. And we actually have some really interesting ones here tonight. Starting off with our first one, we actually got to find out that the world record holder for the longest shot ever made in war, which is 3.8 kilometers, is a 58-year-old sniper. We were asked about this last night, about how old this guy was and some information about him, and according to the Wall Street Journal, this is a picture of the guy, Vyacheslav Kowalski, And he is the guy who was able to shoot with the Horizon's Lord at 3.8 kilometers and get the longest confirmed kill in the history of any kind of long-range shooting. Pretty impressive stuff. And also, this puts into scale how big the Horizon's Lord really is. That thing is huge.
That is massive. What gun is that? Is that the Alligator?
The Horizon's Lord.
Horizon's. I've never heard of that. I thought you were talking about something else when you said that name.
Yeah, well, we actually looked at this thing a good bit last night. It is a pretty impressive gun. It comes in several different calibers, all the way from 12.7 by 94, all the way up to 14.5, a lot like the Alligator, but a really cool rifle. It's a single shot as well, and it's great to know that they were able to hit a 3.8 kilometer shot, setting the record as far as sniping goes. That is also something very interesting as well, is that Ukraine has set the record. I found out today, I never saw the clip, but apparently it's out there, of the longest confirmed tank kill as well at some point, and it was something like 3 point something kilometers as well. It was a very long distance away from the tank, and apparently they used a drone to call in the shots for the tank. So while it isn't the longest confirmed kill where the tank had visible line of sight with the target, it is technically the longest confirmed tank kill in the history of tank-on-tank warfare. So that was a really cool fun fact to know as well. But still, getting back to the whole sniper side of things, it is insane to think that this guy shot at 3.8 kilometers and hit a target, even if it is a 50 caliber gun, because that is in imperial measurements for all of the Americans here, because, you know, 3.8 kilometers means nothing to really any of us. We don't really have like a comparison for that. That is 2.3 miles that the shot was made at and hit. And when you think about a 6 foot tall person or less, probably like a 5'6" tall man at around 2.3 miles and hitting that, that is insane. That is nuts to think that they were able to pull that off. And yet this guy, this 58-year-old guy, was able to pull it off. He is now the best sniper by, you know, just accuracy and range out there in the world. Angry Penguin
He's
said,
the best sniper by a mile.
you know, I think that actually is true. I'm going to have to go look at the long shots, but I think he's beat out.
That would be a badass like slogan if he actually is like the best sniper by a mile. That would be the coolest slogan ever.
Let's see, world's longest sniper shots. And let's see here. World longest recorded sniper kills. So, here we go. We got a list here on Wikipedia. So, this, actually, he didn't beat him out by a mile. He only beat him out by several hundred meters. He beat, let's see, military unit, sniper, JTF-2. We don't get the name of this sniper here. Apparently, we don't get a name of a lot of guys who ended up getting the long shots. Apparently, a lot of them don't want to be known. They just want to remain anonymous. But still, we can see that he only beat out the last guy who hit the long shot in 2017 at 3,540 meters, or around 3,871 yards, by roughly 260 meters. So while it isn't that much farther, you know, it's not a mile farther than the last record shot, that is still crazy. And it's also even crazier to think that the Ukrainians also hold the number 4 spot at 2,710 meters, and that was done in November of 2022. And I remember showing that to y'all on here. That was pretty cool. It wasn't the world record breaker like what happened just, you know, a few weeks ago, but it's still pretty cool to know. And what's even crazier is that the United States only gets on the list with a shot from 2004 at 2,300 meters, number 8 on the list. Pretty shocking, because you would think that the U.S. would have some of the record-breaking long-range shots, but it appears that that's mostly held by the Canadians and the Ukrainians.
That is crazy. Also, I'm looking here at the guns being used to make these shots. It looks like Accuracy International is for the UK. We'll see. Go down to the United States. It's a Barrett M82, it looks like.
A Barrett M82.
And then an M2 Browning.
An M2 Browning. Oh, that was
that's a little unbelievable.
That was by Carlos Hathcock. So we do know that apparently this man here must have had some pretty impressive balls, because he does, you know, Carlos Hathcock. But nevertheless, we can see here that apparently he was able to make a record shot back in the day with a 50 caliber machine gun, which is news to me. Well, it's not news to me, but that's still crazy to think that it's on up there in the top 10. But yeah, that's weird when you
that was
look
back
at
in Nam, of all places.
Man, back in Nam. Back in Nam, we didn't have those fancy sniper rifles. We killed them with a 50 cal and almost over a mile away. It's like, That's weird. That's like insane when you think about that. But anyways, let's look through because I'm really interested now. Wait a minute, there's a 338 Lapua. Look at that.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's-
Accuracy International seems to be a favorite of the people making the long shots.
Yeah, look at that. And also, Chris Kyle, there's the American sniper, had a 1920 millimeter, meter hit with a TAC 338 and 338 Lapua. So it looks like Lapua is actually getting up there on the list. 50 BMG also appears to be a choice caliber. We can see that was used by Nicholas Ranstead, Carlos Hathcock, of course, with the M2, Brian Kremer with the, what is that thing? Is that one of those guided bullets? You know, the ones, let's see. No, it's not. It's just some kind of a weird bullet. But anyways, he used the Barrett M82, but 50 BMG is way up there on the list. In fact, being the second longest shot in the world up until the Horizons Lord took it from the JTF2 sniper. So overall, some pretty interesting stuff to know about the long shots being made around the world. But right now, the record holder is this 58-year-old man, Vyacheslav Kowalski, at 2.3 miles. Amazing stuff. And certainly probably an inspiration to a lot of sniper schools out there on what the benchmark for accuracy really is. But moving on from that and into our next bit of Location Unknown news, we also got to see that United 24 practically made an entire video essay today about how the Ukrainians were going to fight the Russians in winter and how they might be able to defeat them as well during the winter months.
They're going to ski their way to victory.
Man, dude, they're going to get the gold medals at the Olympics. That's how they're going to beat the Russians. It's like Rocky. If you beat up the Soviet guy in the boxing ring, communism collapses. But anyways, I'm going to show you this video. It's a little bit of a lengthy one, so we're going to hop in here and there and say a couple of things because it is quite long, but it's a very interesting one as well. Because United 24 rarely ever goes into this kind of length and detail about something like a grand strategy like this. So it was really interesting here, but here's the clip.
Imagine you have to stay all day outside in below zero temperatures. Now what if it's not a day but a week? And not in a town, but out in the woods or an open field. The war in Ukraine continues, and the frost that comes in the trenches cannot be ignored. How not to freeze when a war takes place in winter, and how does cold influence combat?
I'm not gonna lie, those uniforms right there were cool. Like, those were very cool.
Yeah, I like that vest over it too. Nice contrast.
Beautiful contrast, and look at that spray-painted scar. That is perfectly white.
It's like a Call of Duty loadout out here. And I like the guy's Oakley goggles he's got over on the right. Nice touch.
Dude, I like these over here, the ones with blue, like the blue tint. Pretty sick looking, I'm not gonna lie.
Influence combat.
Facts.
Learn with United 24.
And we are going
Many
to
conflicts of the past were fought during winters. The war between the USSR and Finland was even called the Winter War. Back then, despite the enormous advantage of the Soviet Union, Finns successfully resisted. The USSR has lost at least 126,000 soldiers, 5 times more than its adversary. Finns have effectively used weather conditions, equipping their troops with skis or using deer to transport mortars. In reality, general frost affects both sides of the conflict, giving an advantage to those who are better prepared for cold and understand the peculiarities of winter warfare. The White House's national security spokesperson, John Kirby, said that the US has no expectation fighting in Ukraine will stop in winter. And he was right. Now both sides have to take into account the quirks of winter warfare.
And that's why we have a guest tonight, everyone. We have to talk about the quirks and features of winter weather. That's why we brought Doug DeMuro on. I'm just kidding, we don't have Doug DeMuro on. But when he said quirks, it triggered me to think of Doug DeMuro, who does quirks and features on his channel about cars. But we're doing quirks and features about seasons, and winter's a great one.
And there are a lot of nuances to consider. For example, defense becomes easier than attack, as the fortified structures retain heat at least a little. Also, snow effectively reflects sound, decreasing a chance of an unexpected attack. Oddly enough, hydration might also become a problem. In the cold, human feels less thirsty, despite sometimes losing even more liquid than usual. Remember DiCaprio's character in The Revenant? He suffered dehydration despite being surrounded by snow. Due to some properties, snow cannot completely replace water, which also has to be considered. War is always an effort on the edge of the possible, but winter makes it even harder. There are three key elements of winter warfare that should be considered.
What rifle was that?
Let's see it.
Elements of
It looks like an AR.
winter warfare.
Yeah, I
that
see a
should-
charging handle on the back of it. Oh, there we go.
Wait. Oh, wait a minute. This thing looks like maybe like it's an AR-10 because that mag is chunky.
Yeah, that's probably an AR-10 would be my guess. I don't know what kind of round it's shooting though. Maybe what is it? 308 maybe?
Yeah, I think the AR-10s are chambered in 308 or 7.62 by 51 NATO, which is the military version of that cartridge. It's a little different. Everyone told me that, and y'all were right. It is a different cartridge, and I also like the little wrap that they put on it, dude. This guy is kicking it, man.
Be considered.
And we got the SVD Dragunov over here, Soviet classic. Really cool rifles. And in the collector's market here in the United States, Dragunovs go for roughly $10,000 to $14,000 a piece because they're incredibly rare, at least here in the United States. But overseas, they're very common, especially in Eastern Bloc, former Eastern Bloc countries.
Camouflage and clothes. Use of equipment. Fortification. What comes to your mind when you hear the word camouflage? Something green and brown, right? Yet these colors
Right.
do not work
Yeah.
with snow-covered landscapes. In winter, soldiers, equipment, and even airplanes are painted white with dark patterns. Still, moving undetected becomes a real issue. Snow makes traces highly visible, making tracking the movement of vehicles or people much easier. For instance, fresh tracks on the satellite photos helped military experts to detect Russians actively equipping the airbase in Pripyat, Belarus. Hiding is not the only priority in winter. Another important task is not to get frozen. Americans faced a battle in frost in 1943, retrieving two of the Aleutian Islands from the Japanese. In that fight, Americans lost more men to cold.
1 second, I'm gonna be the average, I'm gonna be the average redditor. Actually, it is not Aleutian, it's Aleutian. Get right.
And diseases than in combat. The average winter temperature in Ukraine is sub-zero. By the end of January, the temperature around Bakhmut, which hosts the fiercest fights, drops to 5 below 0 Celsius. On some days, it even decreased to -15.
Ви знаєте, що на Донбасі зимою може бути холодніше, ніж на Вернадському, я вам чесно скажу. Тут досить такий клімат континентальний, і тут морози ще в тих відкритих ділянках степової частини можуть бути набагато холодніші, ніж саме на Вернадському. Ми не говоримо про всю Антарктиду.
Under such conditions, the quality of soldiers' clothes becomes crucial. Thankfully, apart from Ukraine stocks, the USA, Germany, Lithuania, and other countries have sent tens of thousands of winter uniform sets. For instance, in October, Canadian Minister of Defense Anita Anand announced the transfer of 500,000 items of winter clothes to the AFU. Spending days in the cold requires wearing 5 layers of clothes. Regular underwear, thermal underwear, a sweater, a uniform, and a jacket. All these items are not a whim, but a necessity. In summer, a wounded soldier can wait a long time before evacuation arrives, while in winter, even an hour spent on the ground often becomes fatal. Russians, even those who are not wounded, die on Ukrainian soil due to poor gear. A video
Man, my guy was a little chilly there. Someone needs to get him some sauce to help him out with that chili. It looked like he wasn't liking it.
released in the first cold days of November shows a Russian soldier who checks positions of his unit only to find 3 bodies frozen to death. Heavy equipment requires additional maintenance to function in low temperatures. On the other hand, frost facilitates movement as the frozen soil can hold the weight of heavy machinery. However, it's not that simple. Army manuals of the USA provide a special method of vehicle movement, where the lead vehicle sets the initial track and the following vehicles offset to flatten and widen the trail. When the temperature is 0 or +1 Celsius, the snow starts melting, creating a mesh where everything except for tracked machinery gets stuck. So the saying that the war is fought along the roads becomes especially important. Yet modern warfare is not only about roads and trenches. For the past few months, Russia continuously targets civilian infrastructure. Power plants and structures that provide heating and electricity to peaceful cities are under constant missile strikes. In December, the Ukrainian Prime Minister confirmed that nearly 50% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure is damaged or destroyed. Since this announcement, a few more missile attacks have been carried out, all to leave people face to face with winter. Russia's fuel blackmailing of Europe has become another element of the winter contest. Putin and his propagandists threaten Europe to freeze in winter without Russian fuel. However, the EU has managed to accumulate enough fuel in advance. Gas reserves in Europe make up 82% as of mid-January, which is significantly over the average for this period in recent years. The weather in Europe this winter has also turned out to be quite warm. Meanwhile, the temperature in the east of Russia reaches -40 degrees Celsius. It is worth
Damn. That's pretty freaking cold. I think that's like negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. It's actually pretty freaking cold, you know? It gets chilly.
Is that the temperature? Is that the temperature where if you throw water up in the air, it like instantly freezes and turns into like crystals?
I actually think it might be. Like, I'll have to look into that a little bit, but I think that is the temperature where it immediately crystallizes.
Interesting.
Very interesting indeed. And oh, look, I think this is Russia. It looks a lot like it. Let's find out.
noting that around 1/3 of households in Russia, a country with the world's biggest hydrocarbon deposits, don't have access
Hold up, did you see
The
that
hell was that?
beautiful stuff that this lady was putting? Let's look at that again.
to carbon deposits.
Whatever it is, I do not want any of it. I will
Look at
have-
that look on your face too. Jeez.
Man, this is the situation of the Russians. We have Baba Yaga, Russia's weakest babushka, and we also have pure shit, which is what the Russian government is. There we have it. A picture that completely emphasizes what Российская Федерация is.
Deposits don't have access to natural gas. As it turns out, Putin and Russians lose yet another war, the war of fuel blackmailing. Imagine breaking through enemy's defense lines and advancing. Now you need to fortify your new positions. When the temperature is below 0, you have to dig through frozen soil to form trenches. Later on, you somehow need to insulate them and warm them up. Electric heaters or simple wood stoves are used for this purpose. However, you need to be careful with them, as hot objects are well visible through thermal visors, instantly demasking your positions.
Це дуже тяжко, і в бронежилеті, всьому амуніції, автомат за спиною, і копати, постійно копатися, це дуже тяжко. А потім йти на ночну зміну і там стояти біля 16-градусний мороз, дивитися в тепловізор, приходити декілька годин відпочити і знову йти копатися, це дуже тяжко.
Ukrainians have battled Russians since the hybrid invasion of 2014, so they have experience in winter warfare. They also exchange experience with NATO soldiers, as the alliance has trained for combat in the cold for a long time. The USA, for example, has such training facilities in Alaska, Vermont, and Colorado. Starting in 2006, Norway hosts a large-scale cold response training in which up to 30,000 soldiers from different NATO countries take part annually. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who not so long ago were occupied with quite peaceful things had to learn everything in a real-time mode. Frost can kill just as well as a bullet or shrapnel. At this very moment, Ukrainians fight against both prevailing enemies and the winter. Support forces of good, so that nobody has to celebrate Christmas in trenches ever again.
Ми на своїй рідній землі, тому вона нам і допомагає, скажімо так. А їм, їм важко буде в будь-якому разі, як би це не було тут. Просто так вони отсюди не поїдуть. Поїдуть разве що в мусорних пакетах, скажімо так.
Ham's gonna put him in a plastic bag. How's that gonna work?
Man, I don't know, but you know what they say.
It's gonna be a tight squeeze.
The breeze is fresh. But anyways, it is very interesting to hear about the ways they prepare for the winter cold. And we're now going to be moving on to this interesting little video of these drones that are apparently named after the Magura Brigade, I'm assuming, because they're called Magura version 5 drones. But these are some of the new semi-submersible little kamikaze drones that the Ukrainians are going to be trying to send towards the Russians here in the near future. And they have a warehouse of these things. They haven't deployed them yet, but they're showing them off just to let people know that, you know, things are coming and things will be happening. But here's the clip. It's a secret military base, and that's why we get to see it on camera. And we see them looking at all these new drones. And look at them. They're all nice. They kind of look like, you know, boats with bombs in the side of them. They're pretty neat. Here we can see some footage of them using one of the naval drones to attack a, looks like the Vasily Baikov. Most likely. And we can see them, you know, just panning up and down these drones, just taking a good look at them, because you got to admire these things when you're here.
This looks like one of those like bunkers on GTA 5, like with all the like illicit stuff down in the basement.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Man, and what do y'all think, if y'all play video games, what do y'all think about GTA putting out a trailer, I think it was like a few days ago, and they're announcing the game is going to be released in 2025. I gotta tell you, I heard that a lot of people were pretty, like, miffed about that, about it still being so far in the future, considering it's been like 10 years since the original one was released, well, GTA 5 at least. But let us know. I know this is a war channel, but I'd still like to hear y'all's inputs on just some random things out there. Moving on from that, we also got to hear that the British Ministry of Defense put in a report about what they think is going on in the area of Ukraine. And once again, they are very observant and putting out some interesting stuff. On the 1st of December, a new intake of Russian officers started their studies at the Russian General Staff Academy. The Russian MOD announced that over 60% of the intake has combat experience. Although it was not specified, the majority have likely gained this experience in Ukraine since 2022. You know, like, I have to say, I feel like this is kind of like a no-brainer observation, because the Russians haven't been involved in a war for their forces to get combat experience since 2009 in Georgia, and also when the Second Chechen War ended. So it is a little odd to say, you know, we assume that they would have come from Ukraine. They clearly came from Ukraine, because otherwise there wouldn't have been 60% of these new officer candidates having any kind of combat experience. Students,
hey, bro, you trying to attack the British's intelligence gathering capabilities?
I'm not trying to attack the British. We love the British on this channel. I just want y'all to know that. We love y'all. But I gotta say, sometimes the British Ministry of Defense puts out things like this that sound like they're smart, but when you think about it, it's like, well, obviously, we could infer that from that information, because where else would these soldiers be getting combat experience rather than Ukraine? It's not like there's another war going on anywhere, but students at the academy typically rank between major and general major, equivalent to a one-star general in the NATO system, and are earmarked as having the potential for senior command. While a high proportion of some specialists, such as pilots, deployed on operations in Syria, the Ukraine war means combat experience is now more widespread across this mid-level cadre of Russian officers. Over the coming years, this generation is likely to exert major influence over the future direction of Russia's military and whether it will implement lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. Another thing that we can take from this, and while this looks like it's trying to make a logical statement that would be a true one when being applied to a nation like Britain, that this new officer corps that's kind of being created here, due to its combat experience in Ukraine, is going to be using it to shape the Russian military going on forward. The problem with that, though, is that usually the officer corps has historically had very little impact, even if they have combat experience, on how the Russians end up fighting a war. It's really the very high-ups, for example, the Minister of Defense himself, or even whoever's in charge of Russia, say Putin, or think of World War II, like Stalin, that kind of come up with what the Russian military is going to do, and how in the world their strategies and doctrines are going to evolve. That's usually how the Russians Russians work. In other nations, that corps of officers actually would dictate how things progressed in the future. Like in Britain, out of the Second World War, many British soldiers actually complained about the weight of their standard issued Lee Enfield number 4s, saying that they were too heavy and that they needed to be lightened down significantly to make them easier for soldiers to carry around the field. The British immediately took this recommendation and actually started to work on it before the Second World War was even over. And they ended up coming up with something that would be the shortest serving rifle in British service. They still tried, but you know, it was not a good try. And I'll show y'all what they came up with just to show y'all proof that the British actually do listen to their officers, their enlisted, and really everyone in between. This is what they came up with, which is called the Lee Enfield number 5 Mark I Jungle Carbine. This was the carbine version of the Lee Enfield Mark IV. The barrel was shortened in length. They actually put this weird, like, trumpet-shaped muzzle flash on the front of it. A lot of people like to call that a loudener, although it doesn't make the gun louder. It just looks like it would. And it still fired a .303 cartridge. They also did a couple of other things to shave down weight. They made some lightning cuts in the upper receiver, amongst a whole bunch of other things. And they also gave the gun a little rubber butt pad. And I'll be trying to see if I can show y'all that here. There it is. You can see it right there. And that was meant because the kick was going to be so strong because it's firing a .303 cartridge, a very large one, and it's also firing it with a much lighter rifle. The kick was going to be greater, so the rubber butt pad was there to stop you from, you know, like bruising your shoulder every single time you shot this thing. They ended up putting it into standard service. This became the service rifle of the British for about the next 4 years or so, and it was terrible. It was not able to hold a zero. It was awful, and British soldiers in Malaysia during the Malayan emergency, which was pretty much the Malayan Civil War, but they called it an emergency for insurance purposes because, you know, the British have got to do Britain things. But they said it was so bad, they ended up going, well, we need something entirely new. And then they listened to their military once more. They listened to the officers and the enlisted that had been fighting in Malaysia in the jungle. That's also where it got the name the Jungle Carbine. And then they threw this thing out and they introduced the L1A1, which is a license-built version of the F&FAL. Just a little bit of service history for Britain, just for our British viewers out there who like to know that I do know something about your national history, at least a little bit. But nevertheless, the Russians don't do anything like that. We don't really see that they learn a lot from, say, experience in the field. Like, for example, in World War I, the only reason that they started to phase out the PPSH-41, and let me get you all a picture of this just as a one-off example. Here is a PPSH-41, which was kind of your normal Soviet submachine gun at the beginning of World War II. They then phased it out for the PPSH-43, or the PPS-43, sorry. And let me go get a picture of that. Right here, let me get a better picture. I gotta make sure y'all can see this thing well. Here we go. So they phased this thing out for this thing, not because the soldiers said that this thing was better or that there was problems with the PPSH-41 that needed to be improved on. They actually phased this out and replaced it with this, simply for the fact that this was easier to produce and it was cheaper. All around, generally everyone said that this was a worse submachine gun for various reasons. It was simpler, sure, and that had some qualities that were better, but at the same time, nobody was really a big fan of this thing. But they weren't really a big fan of this thing either, but out of the two, this was far worse. But the Soviets started to push this into mass service, and that would be the SMG that a lot of Soviet soldiers that were issued these kinds of little guns would end up having at the end of World War II. Not the PPSH, which was slightly better. They'd end up having this. And that's usually how the Russian system works. They do not listen to the officer corps. Hardly ever, historically. It's usually just the guys up at the top who are trying to make things cheaper and, you know, get away with cutting corners that really make the quote-unquote innovations in the Russian military. That's really the only place we see them. So it looks like the Ministry of Defense is being slightly optimistic about what the Russians will be doing with this new officer corps. But one thing that the Russians are probably not optimistic about at all is the casualties that they've taken over the past 24 hours. Once again, they are near record-setting in some categories, and it looks like they're just hurting for manpower at this point. Ooh! Oh! 3 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. Really something, I gotta say, Manny. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel very happy. It makes me feel like the Ukrainians have fulfilled their destiny. They have gone to the Bobcat dealership, the Bing Shilling Central, and destroyed 3 more of those abominations. The world has been rid of 3 more of those things.
And I gotta tell you, It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and I love to see it. We also saw that not only did 3 Mir Bombcat skid steers get destroyed, but 1,120 Russian soldiers ended up eating the dust. Oh, sorry, y'all just smacked my watch into my desk. But 1,120 Russian soldiers just ended up being wiped out over the past 24 hours. Sounds like a pretty good deal for the Ukrainian armed forces, because they were the ones responsible for being able to take out these kinds of numbers. Not only that, but they were able to knock out 18 armored personnel carriers, 29 supply trucks, 18 main battle tanks, 21 artillery systems, 33 drones, and 1 cruise missile. It was a fairly good day as far as the Ukrainians conducting a defensive battle near Avdiivka. Of course, this isn't reflective of all the losses we see in this casualty report. This is front-wide, all the way from Kupiansk down to Kherson. But Avdiivka was where we know several hundred Russian soldiers lost their lives today, and was probably the largest loss of Russian soldiers on any part of the active front line at the moment. We're also assuming, because of that a decent amount of the armored vehicles were also lost in those areas as well. Overall, pretty nice to see, and great to know that the Ukrainians are continuing to keep up a very effective defensive and keep the Russians at bay. With that, we're now going to be moving on from our little location unknowns here and on into the juice, and finally getting down to Avdiivka, where we heard some pretty interesting news about what was going on down there. But before we get to that, we have to make sure to talk to all of y'all. The chat has been a little slow tonight. It's been like around 60 chats a minute, which is around 1 chat a second. Sometimes it gets all the way up to 100 or 120. And make sure to talk it up in the live chat, because we do like to hear what y'all say. Just make sure to keep it civil. Don't name call each other. Y'all, most of y'all statistically are at least 40 and up. So, you know, let's have some manners. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the critters have been answering the polls in mass tonight. And our first poll question says, at least 4 rockets have targeted the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. And what do you think is happening? 65% said it's Iran proxies attacking. 21% said it's random terrorists attacking. 10% said, really need more info first. And 5% said unsure. And on this one, I would be shocked if it wasn't one of the Iran proxies attacking that base there, the embassy, excuse me, because right now Iran is still trying to poke the bear, and what is the logical next step is to attack our embassy. So that was kind of expected, and now we see several rockets being fired at that area, as well as the green zone around the embassy also. So I'm sure that will probably get a little bit out of hand, but we'll get it under control eventually. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I don't know, because this actually did happen before. Near the beginning, we saw some pro-Iranian groups fire rockets into Baghdad at the Victory Base at the Baghdad International Airport, and also towards the Green Zone in Baghdad. From what I understand, all the ones heading towards the Green Zone were shot down, and one ended up hitting the Victory Base at Baghdad International Airport. So we know that this has happened before, and there wasn't any response back then, and I have a feeling that we're probably not going to be seeing a response right now. It seems as though the United States is kind of just tiptoeing around in the Middle East at this point, to the point that, you know, I've got to be quite honest, it raises a lot of questions to me why we're tiptoeing around so much. Like, for example, we will not even lift a finger against the Houthis, which are actively attacking Allied shipping in the area of the southern Red Sea, and not only that, have seized some of these ships and taken the crews as prisoner on the Yemeni mainland. That raises a lot of questions to me about what we will respond to if we're not going to respond to what appears to be some form of piracy or privateering by the Houthis on the southern Red Sea. And it appears that I think we probably won't really see a response up in Baghdad either. It's, you know, and I hate to say this stuff because I know that some people are going to take this statement and, you know, spin it a certain way. I can even see some people saying it right now in the chat and saying that it's a political statement, and it's not. I make sure to avoid politics as strong as possible. I'm going off of a historical precedent of what we've done in the past based off of situations like these. If Somali pirates in the early 2010s had been seizing these ships, you guarantee that an international task force would have been out there in the area of the Gulf of Aden and off the coast of Somalia in the Indian Ocean, blasting these pirates away or finding out a way to save these ships before they get interned on the Somali coast. We also saw that in the around 1988, I believe it was, or 1986, that the United States instituted an operation against Iran that ended up sinking half their navy just because they were getting a little bit too mouthy on the diplomatic stage. We have seen that the United States has reacted in major ways before to instances and situations like these, even as recently as putting troops back on the ground in Syria and Iraq to crush the ISIS movement. You know, and of course, this is over the span of nearly 50 years that we're talking about, from about the mid 80s all the way up until the present day. We have seen that the United States has responded, and I have to say this, equally under both sides, quite vehemently in making sure that Allied sovereignty and American sovereignty is ensured in the area. And the fact that we're really responding to nothing at this point in the Middle East, we have sent some carrier task groups. The Gerald R. Ford is still in the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Dwight D. Eisenhower is in the Persian Gulf, along with some several other U.S. destroyers that are currently patrolling through the Red Sea. It just doesn't really seem to me that this is really meaning much. We're not seeing a lot happening. We've seen a few airstrikes in Syria, a few in Iraq. You know, fair enough, that is some kind of response. But we're not seeing that the response is par to par with what Iran or Iranian-backed groups are doing. And I don't think this is a good move strategically for the United States, because it is making the United States look like we're very hesitant to act even in situations where we would be fully justified in responding, even if it's on the behalf of our allies, like the British, who have had some of their ships seized by the Yemeni Houthis, or on the behalf of Central American countries whose ships that, you know, are usually owned by a British company are crewed by. We would have a duty for the large part to respond, especially not just because of that, but also because the Houthis started to attack U.S. destroyers in the southern Red Sea during that same span of time. And we're just not seeing it. So I would say it's concerning. We will be covering that a little bit here in a bit once we get to that news segment, but it doesn't really look like we're going to be making any response to anything going on in that area. So best wishes to all U.S. forces that are in the area, the Marines who are at the embassy, all of the U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq, because it appears that if they are attacked, there will be no response from the U.S. side of things. So, you know, I hope that addresses that well. I see some people saying, you know, never go in half-cocked. Well, I would agree, but it's been a good 50 days or so since this started in the Middle East. It's been over a month and a half. It's almost 2 months now. And we shouldn't be going in half-cocked at this point. We've had 2 entire months to do whatever we need to be ready to respond, and we're still seeing that there is not really a response. And I honestly feel at this point we're kind of fumbling the ball both in the Middle East and in Ukraine, but you know, that's a topic for another time, and that's going to start getting political. You know, of course it would get into both sides, because, you know, it's one side doing one thing in one place and the other side doing something in another, but it will get political, and we avoid that stuff here on this channel as a rule. But with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and our next poll says, now that Ukraine aid is faltering in the U.S., some in Ukraine say that the U.S. is not to be trusted any longer. And what are your thoughts? 38% said that's a fair statement. 36% said that's an unfair statement. 16% said, Ukraine should really remain silent on that. And 10% said unsure. And on this one, I personally have to say I think it's an unfair statement to make, because there's a lot of people in the U.S. that are supporting Ukraine aid, and it kind of puts those people to shame to hear that the entirety of the United States shouldn't be trusted just because there's a holdup with aid in our government. I think that's a bad statement to make, and Ukraine should really be very hesitant to make statements like that. And not everybody in Ukraine is saying it, but there are a handful, and I'm not going to name them off because we don't want to start a fight with these people. They obviously are entitled to their own opinion, but, you know, you should think before you speak. I'll just put it that way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it doesn't sound that good for the Ukrainians to try and just say, and can you rephrase the statement again for me exactly?
Oh, it was that some in the United States are not to be trusted. Hold on, let me get the exact words for you. I was going to try to paraphrase, but let me go back to the poll. It says, some in Ukraine say the U.S. is not to be trusted any longer.
And who is saying that exactly?
Some folks in Ukraine that hold positions.
So are they part of the Verkhovna Rada, or are they deputy ministers? Are they ministers?
Some people in the press and low-level government.
Interesting. So I'm assuming that they're probably members of the Verkhovna Rada. I would assume.
I wouldn't know that, but low-level government.
We'll try and look into that a little bit, but statements like those, considering that they're coming from lower level people in the Ukrainian government, usually there's always crazy stuff said in the lower levels of government. I mean, like, just being honest with y'all, look at the U.S. House of Representatives for a minute and look at all the crazy crap that happens with the people who are in the House. Like, on every side, it's insane. So I wouldn't really put too much credit in it, but if that kind of an idea or that kind of a messaging starts to creep up to higher levels of the Ukrainian government, say deputy ministers or anything like that, I would start to say that that's not a real smart move to just start spitting in the face of the United States, because we're currently having issues with providing Ukraine support for one reason or another that we can't get into. That would seem a little bit aggravating to me, especially considering that I'm an American, and through our, almost daily efforts, 60 hours a week for 2 years, we've ended up raising around $1.3 million for nonprofits that have been helping out in Ukraine. That would seem like a spit in the face to us, and it would also seem like a spit in the face to everyone else who did support those fundraisers and tried to help out Ukraine as best as we all could. I wouldn't like that if that started to become a prevailing idea in Ukraine, and it would be a little bit of a tricky situation to justify supporting Ukraine, especially if that became a prevailing idea. It's not right now, but if it did become a prevailing idea, it would become very difficult to support Ukraine, because how do you justify supporting a country that acts like we can't be trusted when we're paying them to fight their war? So that seems a little bit weird to me, but at least it's just junior deputies or some people in the Verkhovna Rada that are saying this stuff, because if they're saying it, it doesn't really matter much. If it starts to become a prevailing idea, then it might start to matter. But with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll to address for now, so we are moving in to our Super Chat questions. And our first one is going to go to Hal Rose, who puts in a $33 donation, and thank you very much, Hal, for being the largest Super Chatter of the night thus far, and thank you very much for the support. He says, Enforcer Matt, thanks for showing the plane that Baba Yaga got, and now that the Russians are screaming witchcraft, Slava Baba Yaga, and pick a question, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Hal Rose, and thank you for being the largest Super Chatter of the night so far, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, yes, I did enjoy showing the plane that Baba Yaga got. It was quite nice to see, and of course, absolutely wonderful to know that they are able to, have some problems in the aviation industry, best way to put it. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and I would have to agree. The Russians are always screaming witchcraft, and that's kind of funny because they're usually the craftiest of the witches, but we will make sure to grab a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Barry Woodward, who says, are we tiptoeing around in preparation for something much larger soon? I hope.
Maybe, but it just... It doesn't seem like that to me. It kind of seems like we're just, being... and it's hard to say that because I have to admit to y'all, while I never speak politics on this channel, I'm always looking at what's going on politically in the United States, because I always want to make sure that we avoid making political statements. So I have to know what people are saying right now, so that way I can avoid making any statements that are similar to it in one form or another. Because, last night Matthew was woke, and today we could be revolutionary communists or fascists, depending on what we say. So, I've always got to try and make sure that we're not going to say anything that may be construed one way or another. But what the U.S.
Yeah, Matt's not woke. He's bull moose. But anyways,
what we're seeing right now in the Middle East, it just kind of seems weak. Like, that's the best way I can explain it. It doesn't really give a good look to the United States. And some people are saying, oh, they're just waiting for something else big to happen. We can't do that. I mean, we don't do that. Like, in the lead up to World War II, we were largely already helping out in some quieter ways and helping out other nations, like the British, for example. We also did that in World War I as well, while we were still getting ready for war. And that didn't stop us from supporting, say, the British, or, the British through World War I or World War II, or actually knowing that we're going to war but still helping out people nevertheless. That's never stopped us before. And it just honestly seems to me that the stance we're taking in the Middle East isn't a good one. The Middle East is a place that is largely going awry right now. The Turks are doing Turkish things. The Iraqis, of course, will have very loose control over most of the fringes of their country, including the northern parts near where Kurdistan would be, and also just really the unpopulated areas of Iraq. There's really almost no control out there at all. We also see that in Syria, there's still an ongoing civil war that we are currently involved in and still do have troops on the ground for that reason. We can see that the Iranians are conducting terrorist operations throughout the entirety of the Middle East right now, all the way from Yemen to Israel. It's a pretty tough situation down there. It's a terrible one. To be honest, things are falling apart, and it honestly needs out of this chaos a strong man to step up and start to straighten things out. And we're not seeing that right now. Things are still going awry, and as they go awry, we're going to see that the Chinese are going to step in, and they're going to take advantage of the situation, and they're going to be the strong man, or the Russians, who really don't have the ability, are going to attempt to be a strong man in the area. That is going to end up being a very severe issue. It just will. And it's something that I think we need to step in and take care of first. We do not need the Chinese taking advantage of the situation. We do not need the Russians taking advantage of the situation, like they probably will. We need to make sure that we are able to bring the situation under control before it gets out of our grasp. That's what I honestly think. But with that,
if this keeps getting worse around the world, I might have to step up and actually take it over and, fix the problem. But until then, I'll let them try to figure it out.
Listen, if they can't fix it, I might just have to intervene. You know what I mean? Like, I'm built to.
Yeah, facts, man. We're just going to go up there and just, take it over. You know what I'm saying? Legally. Legally. But still, whether y'all agree or disagree, and I got to say this really quickly as well, just to give a quick disclaimer. I'm giving y'all my opinion since, I was asked about it on what's going on in the Middle East. It's not, I don't want to be associated with anyone else, because honestly, I think both sides of the political spectrum are pretty goofy. Just looking at the way they are right now, I don't really like either of them, so I don't want to be affiliated with them. But that's my input on the Middle Eastern situation. I understand it in other scenarios, like when we tiptoe around the Chinese. I get it. I mean, the United States and China are the two largest power players in the world right now. There's going to be a lot of tiptoeing involved, so I can't really go and bash anyone for tiptoeing around that situation. But in the Middle East, where the power players are a step or two removed, there is no reason to tiptoe around. We can get things under control there if we have to, and we kind of have to at the moment, because things are starting to get a little awry, a little too awry to be comfortable with. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one. All right, and up next, we've got a $30 super chat from Marion Deemer. Hey! Also, longtime channel viewer, Hal Rose and Marion Deemer are like staples of the Enforcer channel, and thank you once again, Marion, for that $30 support. And she says, any idea why Zelensky suddenly canceled his live chat yesterday?
I don't know. It was abruptly canceled very quickly because he said he had other things to attend to, but we didn't get any extra information either, and I haven't been able to find any extra information. It was very cut and dry. It was just, he has better things to do. I'm not going to lie, that's kind of weird to say, considering that the United States has been, historically, throughout the war, the largest monetary supporter of Ukraine for the past 2 years, that there are more important and pressing things to do than talk to the congressional representatives of the nation that's provided, I think, nearly $7 billion in military aid. That was a little weird to me, but I don't really have a good explanation as to why that happened. I guess there are more important things than trying to persuade congressional members that it is important to support Ukraine at the moment. And if that's what Zelensky decides, that's what he decides. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I hate to give a cop-out, and I feel like that's a cop-out answer, but we still don't know. There's been no explanation given. And I see some people saying, Zelensky is a very busy guy. Yes, that's true, but,
he can make time.
I feel like, I'm just saying this. I feel like you can make time, especially when Zelensky also says, the only way we're going to win this war is through massive amounts of foreign support, that he couldn't make time to talk to the people who give the most foreign support. That was just honestly a little weird to me. That's like saying, that would be like a college kid, like one of the rich college kids that never pay for anything. That would be like them going, dude, man, I have to get money from my dad to be able to keep this lifestyle. And then, his dad asks to talk to me. He goes, hell no, bro. And then he goes and does something else. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, that kid's not getting money anymore. And that's kind of going against the whole thing he just said. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of this segment. And then we're going to be moving back into the news.
Also, Enforcer, by the way, I got a interesting poll question idea from Hoodoo, Texas. I thought it was a good one, but it is like on the questionable border of possibly getting near politics. But I sent it to you in the Discord. I saw many people putting in a vote of confidence to get the poll up. So would you like to let me know if you'd approve it or disapprove?
Well, if I pop it up on screen, if I pop it up on my Discord, everyone's going to see it. So
that's fine. I mean, it's not that bad to like hide it or anything.
Let's see. Yeah, that's that right there. Like, I have to say, I'll tell you, I know what the situation is right now going on in Congress about that, but that is going to be raw political right there, because that starts tying in domestic politics with international diplomacy. And that's something we generally want to avoid. It's a good question, though. If it wasn't for a no politics rule, I'd probably have the question asked. But at the same time, I know that that's going to start causing a lot of fights. One thing we've learned is that while the Lee Spring Army is amazing, there are people who are always just chomping at the bits to be as violent and ugly as possible about their political views. I don't get it, because, no matter how violent or ugly people get about their political views, they're not going to be changing the government overnight, being that ugly and violent. But at the same time, I know what's going to happen, so we generally want to avoid questions like that or polls like that, because it is going to devolve into pure chaos. And also, I can't even tie in my own opinions on that, because those would be inherently political opinions, and we always want to avoid being political on the stream. We're just about supporting Ukraine. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news.
All right, and the last one of the segment goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, or Sarge, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, LSA Sergeant Figment, as well. You're also a longtime channel viewer. We do appreciate it very much. And he says, Matt yells in a sergeant voice. I'm actually going to modify this slightly. It's going to be a slight British accent if I can try to pull it off. He says, LSA, this is a direct order. Hit the like button now and show our glorious commanders some love and support. Show your support to Ukraine and Israel. Slav LSA, Slav Ukraine, and Am Israel High.
Hey, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for making this channel possible. It is folks like you who help this thing to keep rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to do this, LSA Sergeant Figment. Thank you so much once again. Am Israel High, I think I'm saying that correctly. And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, really quickly, I have to address this again because I see the live chat is a little heated right now. I say we're not talking about politics, and then people say, come on, talk about those, and then say a derogatory statement about some political group, one or the other. Please don't. I don't like, trying to have to say this stuff on stream, but I don't want to get into politics. I honestly can't stand politics. I want to be the president, but I hate politics at the same time. It's something that I can't stand. It's so stupid and goofy. I mean, on every side, nothing makes any sense when you actually ask questions to any group. Nobody knows what the hell they're even talking about in politics. They all just say crap because it's the slogans of the day. I can't stand it. And that's me, to be honest, and I don't like to see it. And I also don't like to know that the community is going to get divided over things that honestly don't make any sense. I'm not even going to go into it, because then it starts to just bash everyone, and then everyone doesn't feel, happy about the whole politics thing. But I just don't like it. And also, by the way, someone said, someone does good with politics. No, they don't, because they're clearly biased. Like, that particular person, they are biased towards one direction, clearly. And we saw that up front and personal, because they wanted to hop in and defend someone purely because they were very political in one direction, and they heard we were the other, so they just went and attacked us outright, mostly because of that reason. So we know that that's not true. But with that, we are going to be moving on from that and getting the live chat that LSA Sergeant Figment wanted. So what do we got?
All right. And the live chat question goes to Barry Woodward, who says, does the UN actually have any authority to invoke a ceasefire in Israel?
And who has the authority again? Let me hear that again.
He says, does the UN have the authority? And the short answer is no.
The short answer, no. They can ask for a ceasefire, but that's really up to both sides to agree to in that conflict, and they most likely wouldn't. We've seen that they really don't at all, and the ceasefire they had for a while was pretty unique in its own way and didn't really last even when it was extended. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again, LSA Sergeant and Figment, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you who support this channel help us to be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the northern area of Ukraine, specifically near Tavozhanka, where we got to see that a Russian drone got hit, which was pretty cool. Actually, I'm sorry, this is actually a Ukrainian drone hitting a Russian Muron-M surveillance system.
Low battery, governor. Can you go ahead and smash it?
Oh,
Look at that super patriotic eagle up there in the top right corner, man. You have the stars and everything, the red and the blue. That eagle be looking like it's got a neck on it.
Man, this thing looks like it's about to deliver the mail.
He's I'm going postal, baby. Watch out.
It said, watch this. And look, slaw. I love slaw. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that little clip right there. Nice to see they were able to destroy another Muron-M surveillance system in the area and once again blind the Russian unit that was using it. We can also see that the 44th Brigade started to conduct some artillery fire against Russian positions in this area again today, which was also pretty interesting.
Also, by the way, I got to get this poll out of the way. It was kind of like a funny one. I knew how it was going to go. The question is, should Matt permanently retire the British accent? 46% said, oh, yes, absolutely, egad. 40% said, nah, keep it going. 14% said unsure. And I actually voted for option number 1. I said, absolutely, get rid of that damn accent. I don't want to hear it again. It made myself cringe. So I agreed with the 45%. And that poll is going to go away now because we got to get to a serious one.
Yes, that's quite right. And also, Matthew, I have to ask, make sure to be vigilant right now, because I see a lot of people trying to use the no politics thing to get political. It's like the, like, I'm not racist, but kind of thing. People are like, I'm not getting political, but, and then they say, like, the most political thing possible. So let's make sure to try and keep a lid on that in the live chat, because it looks like, you know, we're having a little bit of an issue with it. But we can still see that the 44th is hitting some Russian positions pretty accurately. It looks like they're taking out a grad right here. And we can see them hitting a couple of more targets. And that's the end of the clip. But very nice to see that the 44th Brigade was able to knock out some Russian forces in the area. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit, which we actually have no news all the way from Kuzmivka to Severodonetsk. Our next little video clip is from the area of Bakhmut, where we got to see that a Russian tried to leave his dugout to take out a Ukrainian drone, and let's see how it went.
Sick intro.
Very sick. And of course they have the interesting music. Don't really know what it is.
What's that, Lord of the Rings? Look at him. Oh.
Look at
Did
him
he fall off
go.
a cliff or something? He fell in a trench.
Man, my boy down here, he's a little flustered.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh! Dude, he was really getting going, too. Look at him. He was getting fast. Oh. Yeah, he's not having that great of a day. Automobili. And they got that, too. And with that, That's the end of the clip right there, but very nice to see that they were able to get some choice FPV hits in the area today. Moving on from that and down into Klishkivka, we also got to see that the first separate special purpose brigade was able to hit a Russian tank, a BMP, with a Stugna. Here's the clip. We see the Stugna on its way. And yes. Damn. That's all right.
Yes.
And so with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Very nice to see they were able to hit it and, you know, do a little bit of work to it. And hopefully that will make sure that that BMP never walks again. That's the catch. BMPs don't walk, they crawl. But moving on from that into our next clip, I got to see for the first time ever, and this finally, you know, cleared something up in my mind. The Russians still do use the Shilka, and they made it look like a junkyard. So here's the clip. What firepower, what speed, oh bled. But still, interesting to note that they do use Shilkas and apparently have a few out there somewhere. Meanwhile, moving on down towards Avdiivka, we also got to see that the Russians were on the road down there and saw some signs of some destroyed equipment as they were heading that way. Look at that, 2S1. They got the little laugh, how cute. I like to see, I love to see. And so, with it.
These guys sure do know how to yuck it up on the Warzone.
Just a little silly little fella. They're about to drive right into the pits of hell, but silly little fellas as they go straight to Pizza Hill. But moving on from that into Avdiivka, we did hear today that apparently some kind of a HIMARS strike in the northern area of Avdiivka, specifically near Krasnodarivka, was able to disrupt a Russian offensive that was pushing over the railroad berm again in this area and force them mostly back across. We'll see if that is correlated to the Deep State UA map, so let me update this and then zoom back in again. So here's the 7th, here's the 6th. It appears that there was a small move further along the railroad berm, but the push across the railroad berm was disrupted and no additional ground was made again today, which is, of course, great to see. But moving on into our clips, our first clip actually comes from the southern end, as we saw a Stugna hitting a BMP, and hopefully this isn't the same. Nope, it's a different clip, actually. It's another Stugna, and here's the clip. When you see the BMP firing, it looks like a BMP-2. There goes the Stugna. Boom. Yes. And that man was getting hyped at the end, and I gotta say, I respect the hype. Love to see it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip into the area behind Prvomaiske, where we can see that an Archer SPG was in action. And so, here's the clip. Oh! Very nice.
Ligger bakom fiendens linjer runt 3 mil bort.
We're going to mute.
And what they speaking?
They're speaking that Elvish. Actually, I'm kidding. They're speaking Swedish. But we can see them operating their little Archer. And they got the boys in the Discord. Well, love to see it.
It's strange when you're looking at war footage and you're not sure if they're actually like gaming or you're not sure if they're actually fighting. You're not really ever sure.
You never know. You just never know. When you see them firing that Archer again, and I got to tell you, man, that's a pretty weird Archer. It's not really firing arrows. It's like, you know, puffing smoke, kind of like an addict. It looks kind of rough, but we
just like an addict.
Just like an addict.
Oh, an addict. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said an attic. I was like, why is the attic on fire? But okay, I got you.
Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see some pictures of the Archer system. Generally the same things we just saw a moment ago, but nice pictures and good to see. Good to see. Take a look at that and look at these apples. But anyways, moving on from that, it's great to hear that Avdiivka went well today and the defensive was effective. We're now going to be moving on inside of Donetsk, where we got to see that the Russians filmed the aftermath of a HIMARS strike that occurred in the city. Check it out. This was filmed by none other than TASS, which is the Russian news agency. Well, one of them. Looks like they hit it to me. We have our Russian MP, giant black armband MP.
Комитета Российской Федерации зафиксировали последствия от преступных действий украинских националистов. Вооруженные формирования Украины произвели целенаправленный обстрел гражданской инфраструктуры города Донецка, именно в Буденновском районе, с применением...
I would like to take a quick note of a couple of things. First, there is no bulletproof plate inside of this plate carrier. You can tell because the fabric at the top is bending, and if there was a hard plate in there, it would not be doing that in that way. Second, it's very interesting to see that their investigation was conducted by one lone MP and not a team or anything like that. They just had one guy out there, and that was it, according to the news agency. Very interesting stuff to observe, but, you know, still the damage is visible. It was a HIMARS strike, but they're kind of having this guy out here as formality, apparently.
СЗО «Хаймерс» с поражающими элементами в виде шрапнели. И в результате данного обстрела, при тушении пожара, при ликвидации последствий обстрела, ранения получили 13 сотрудников МЧС. Кроме этого, 2 сотрудника погибли.
We now see him apparently inspecting a fire truck for no reason. I think...
Did they rob it?
Man, they may have.
This pans to a broken out, busted window. He's like gnawing at the back door with a screwdriver. What's going on, man?
What happened? But moving on from that and into our next clips that are in the Zaporizhia front, which we have a decent amount of today. Starting off with our first one, we got to see near Petrivka an FPV attack being conducted against Russian supply routes in the area. We can see them hitting one truck, two truck, We see them hitting their fourth truck.
Maybe hit the urinal.
Man, they hit the urinal. Man, the Russians be pissing. It's not a urinal anymore. Call it a urinal. But we can see them hitting.
Not a pissing contest.
Oh, but it is. and we pissing the farthest, baby, and the strongest. But we can see them hitting the fifth truck, the sixth truck. The seventh?
Count Dracula would be having a strunk right now.
Man, Count Dracula would be struggling right now to keep up. The eighth truck. The ninth truck.
The ninth truck.
But that's the end of the clip right there. And great to see that they were able to attack Russian supply routes so thoroughly in the area. We're now moving on into Staromayorsk, where we also got to see the 36th Brigade, or the 501st Reconnaissance Battalion of the 36th Brigade, in action. Check it out. As we mute the musica. Well, you see the Russian trenches as the Russians scurry around inside of them. And when you see the drone coming on in, and we see some dog or a cat or something running off after the dugout got blown up. And that's the end of the clip right there. And so, that's the end of that video. Very nice to see the 36th Brigade doing a good job, and we're now moving on into our next clip, where we also got to see the Mi-8 that was hit by an artillery shell yesterday being confirmed lost by the Russians today, as they went up and took some insurance assessment pictures showing that it had been damaged to the point that it's most likely not going to be operational. Very nice to see. Really not much more to add than that. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russians apparently dropping Fab 500 glide bombs from an aircraft today. We don't know where this was, but here's the clip. We see him looking down, and there goes the Fab 500 glide bombs.
Whoa.
Pretty wild looking, pretty interesting.
They got little wangs on them.
Man, they got them little wangs and things, you know what I mean? But moving on from that and into the area of Tarasivka, we also got to see that the 45th Artillery Brigade was destroying some Russian vehicles as well. And here's the clip. All right, we're going to be muting that. But we see a BMD, which is a airborne vehicle, showing that the VDV is most likely in this area. And we see the artillery smack down right on top of the roof, setting it up in flames. We can also see a BMP down there that looks like it may have already been hit. And we can see that it's been destroyed. We see another BMP burning. We can also see a BMP-2 that may be smoking near this house right here, like a nice barbecue smoking the meats. And we see that BMP-2 is now also burning along with the other BMP. Both of them have been destroyed. And that's a good one, Gregory. They all are airborne in these videos, but some of them are more airborne than others. And that's the VDV, no doubt about it. And we see that they destroyed that MTLB as well. I mean, you see another one that has not been hit yet, but will be. And we see, there was a Scooby-Doo van down there that we didn't get mentioned that was blown up. But with that, while it sounded like Matthew was underwater, it was like... But anyways, that's the end of the clip right there. Great to see the 45th Artillery doing some work in the area. And that's largely all of the news we had from the Southern Front today. Moving on from there and down towards Krenki, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier clearing a house in the village of Krenki, which is, of course, very interesting to observe. Here's the clip. All right, and we're going to be muting that. And we can see the drone looking down at the house. We haven't seen the Ukrainian soldier yet. Actually, I think he may be right there. I can't really tell. That may be him. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Here's a Ukrainian soldier clearing the house. Usually I get out on a broom for that kind of thing, but he gets out an AK. Respect. When you see the camera looking around at the debris still. And we see someone moving around down there. We don't really know what's going on at the moment, but looks like they're starting to walk off. Oh!
Cherry pie.
What?
I don't know. People are saying cherry pie in the live chat. I'm just sitting here thinking that sounds mighty tasty.
That does. That actually sounds pretty good. We see that the Ukrainians successfully cleared that house in Krinky, and it also looks like Krinky has taken some pretty serious damage from all of the previous fighting. But moving on from that little clip in Kherson, it's now time for us to move on all the way out of Ukraine for a quick moment into what's going on over here with the partygoers, well, not the partygoers, Hamas and the homesteaders. We have seen that there has been a rocket attack on the U.S. Embassy in the Green Zone in Baghdad. I was not able to get any clips or footage of that before the stream, but we did hear about it, and we are currently trying to get news and information for tomorrow's stream. But moving on into the area where the homesteaders currently are, within southern Lebanon, we saw that the IDF has been hitting some targets in the area, apparently operated by Hamas or its counterpart. And we hear the sounds of distant explosions in another area that aren't being filmed. And that's the end of that clip, but showing that apparently the homesteaders are starting to take some actions in the far north. But we also saw that there were more films of this happening in other areas today. Well, hang on. Okay, yeah, that was today. I'm sorry, the dating convention is different than the one we have in America. But we can see here some smoke coming off of a hilltop, possibly indicating artillery fire. And it clearly is artillery fire, maybe even incendiary. And that's the end of the clip. But moving on from that and on into our next one, we also got to see that within the area of the south, near the actual Hamas 10, there was apparently some kind of a massive explosion today. We don't know where it was in the area, but we did get to see it because the IDF filmed it. So here's the clip. Pretty damn big.
That's a big one.
Wow. הרגשתם את ההדף? באוויר. ככה שכונה נעלמת. עכשיו צריך לחכות שזה יתפזר לראות מה קרה לבניינים. איזה פרצוף.
And that's the end of the clip, but a very interesting explosion, and we don't really know a lot about it at all right now. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also saw that apparently an RPG team was taken out in another location, which apparently was a little too spicy. So we're going to be moving on from that into our next one, where we saw another group getting hit after they came out of a tunnel. But that was also a little too spicy, so we can't show that one either. So we're going to be moving on to a little clip showing how the Hamas folks set up a little ambush. You see them crawling around on the floor. Then, after they crawl around on the floor really quietly, they then get near a window and they get ready to go. We now see them conducting the ambush, and that's where the video ends. Why did it end there? Well, because the guy filming ended up getting got in the middle of this firefight, and the footage was retrieved by the homesteaders because he was no longer around to keep the footage. That's how they got it and got to see how the ambush even occurred. But moving on from that, we also saw that near a specific location near a university in southern Gaza, apparently the IDF set off some kind of an explosive device in the area.
כאן משנה, רשאי יבוא. כאן משנה, רשאי.
And we now see the explosion going off. Damn.
The whole block went up.
Man, that's how it'd be like in Detroit.
Yes!
Damn.
קחו את זה!
היה הייתה
חנוכה
אוניברסיטה,
שמח, עם ישראל!
שנקרא נר ראשון.
חנוכה שמח לעם ישראל. חנוכה שמח ממסגרת טבעוני.
We see the smoke dissipating, and that's the end of the clip, captured by CapCut. Moving on from that and into one of our last little bits of information that we got from the area today, we also saw that the IDF was in Gaza and just got like a general montage of their activities from the day. And that's the end of the clip, but showing a little bit of the action going on in the area. With that, that's really all we have from the area today. Of course, we can't really say the exact name, but that's all we have, and it's time for us to move on all the way back up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 652 of the war. This is actually yesterday's speech, so we will not be able to cover that speech. But we will be able to cover all of the amazing comments that y'all have thrown in tonight. I will have to say in advance, though, that our stream tonight is going to have to be shortened a little bit. It will not be able to go on for 3 hours like we have been doing. It's going to be a little bit shorter, probably ending around 2 hours and 15 minutes to 2 hours and 20 minutes in. We have our final exam tomorrow morning for law school, and we want to make sure that we are well rested and ready to go for that. Of course, hate to say that, and I hope that everyone appreciates the channel and what we do and all that stuff, you know, that crap. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving on to our only poll question of the last segment. The question is, are you satisfied with U.S. foreign policy toward Asia, the Middle East, and Europe? 49% said no, foreign policy is unsatisfactory. 26% said, it's about 50-50 for me. 15% said yes, foreign policy is satisfactory. And 10% said unsure. And I think personally, U.S. foreign policy should be of the mindset of, walk softly, carry a big stick. That seems to be a... speak softly, carry a big stick.
We roll
and
our
be ready to
toes.
use the big stick, too, if you need to use it. But in this case, I don't think we're walking, well, let me take that back. We're actually walking softly, but we're not using a big stick. I'm not sure if the big stick is in arm's reach at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would largely have to agree with that, and I think, in my opinion, I covered it very thoroughly, in my opinion, on it earlier on. So I hope that if anyone's wondering what my opinion is, y'all were seeing the stream a little bit earlier. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are now moving into our Super Chat questions. And our first one is going to go to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Steve, for that support. He says, do you think lessening support for the Ukraine from the West is convincing Russia to hold on, knowing they can outlast Ukraine's economy and slowly reduce the Ukraine's Western equipment and munitions?
I think it is. I would actually agree with that, Steve. And I got to thank you first for the support, because... it is what it is, but still, thank you so much for the support. And I would say yes, I think the Russians are looking at that as a sign of hope, because as long as Western support was going into Ukraine, they knew there was probably not a chance in hell that they'd really be able to win. But if Western support starts to fizzle up and dry out, that means that if they hold on long enough, they may actually win and achieve their goals. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Steve, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is something that is becoming a very pressing concern to us in the background. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got one from LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 10 again, and thank you very much. He says, hey guys, tonight let's check out my current neighborhood, Lake Eola in Orlando, Florida. Pretty lakes and tons of fishing. Are y'all hunters or anglers? And if so, what do you hunt and catch? And I love fishing more. And personally, I don't hunt, nor do I angle, because I simply don't have time. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, thank you for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment. And I would, like, is it like a general area, Matthew, or is it like a specific street?
I like Iola in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, yeah, we could check that out. Let's go over here real quick. We won't be able to check it out too much, though. But let's see. Where in the world is this specific lake? Let's see here. Let's see here. I don't know where this lake would be. There are a lot of lakes around this area, but we will try and check it out maybe sometime later. But I do want to thank you for the support. And sadly, I don't angle and I don't fish. Well, I don't fish and I don't hunt. I just do a lot of target shooting. And that's just kind of what I enjoy. But still, I thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope we were able to address that well, and thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and making it possible, because it is starting to become increasingly harder to do that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in another 10. And thank you once again for that third or fourth support of the night. And LSA Saad says, best of luck with the last exam tomorrow. And as a teacher, my best advice for you is to go into the exam with confidence and feel proud of your studies and hard work. And confidence is the key to success. And it is.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the tips. I will make sure to try and use them tomorrow, because it is a very stressful exam. It's probably going to be the most difficult one we've taken so far from what we're assuming. I hope that's not true, but it is stressing me out a good bit on top of everything else. And so thank you so much for the kind words and the support as well, because you are helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for that, because, you know, that is what it is. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Nick, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much. He says, is it possible we are avoiding Middle East because it's a trap to weaken us for the China, Russia, Iran in the coming years?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a trap. Everyone's always saying that this and that's a trap. Everyone said Ukraine's a trap, and it isn't. It's just situations that arise that we need to get control of. It's a lot like saying, you know, we can't dodge this car crash here because this, well, no, it's more like we have to have this car crash here, because if we don't, we might be missing a trap further down the road where someone was going to blast us with a shotgun as we were driving by. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like, you know, we need to avoid this car crash and get things under control now, because, you know, it will be in a lot better shape if anything happened further down the road. But with that, hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. Hopefully the analogy made sense, because I don't really think it did. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a 10 from Siri. And Siri, thank you very much for that support, while the thing over in the corner of the room starts flashing. And Siri says, thank you for the continued dedication to Ukraine. And this is for Emma and Patron.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for bringing up Patron, the dog, sweet, precious dog. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to stay on air. I got to thank everyone who does support, because on nights like these, we, you know, we kind of wonder how long can we run. It doesn't look like it will be that much longer, but still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and thank you for helping us to try and keep this channel running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Gerald Mansfield, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Gerald, for that support as well. He says, can Ukraine afford $22,000 per flight hour for the F-16?
They can. They'd, of course, just have to finance that and do a payment plan after the war, but I think they certainly could manage that if they needed to. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Zigomontus Caucasus, I think. I'm not really sure, but thank you very much for the $6 support. And he said, I'm watching from Lithuania. And how likely is it that the Baltic states and Poland can be dragged into this hot mess? We are preparing for the worst.
And thank you for supporting. Can you reread that one again real quick?
They said, I'm watching from Lithuania. How likely is it that the Baltic states and Poland can be dragged into this hot mess? We are preparing for the worst.
And I thank you for the support, and also thank you for being a Lee Spring Army member from Lithuania. And to answer that question, I have a feeling that the chances of y'all being dragged in are slim to none, because we'd all get dragged in the same. So I think it would be pretty pretty light chance. I don't think it would be a big one. And on top of that, the Suwalki Gap would never be closed because the Russian forces in Kaliningrad are down to a skeletal crew at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I would not panic at all. I would say that for sure. And with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Maria Eastwood, who puts in a $20 donation and puts in a super sticker that says, "Thanks for being you," and holds up a mirror looking at itself. That's the narcissistic pair, by the way, that in that super chat, in the super sticker, I mean. And Maria, thank you very much for your first ever super chat on the stream, because it is helping to keep the channel running, and we are funded solely through the viewers. So y'all keep this thing going, and thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Maria Eastwood, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now. And so thank you so much once again, and thank you for being you and finding this channel worthwhile enough to support. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and this one goes to old Buzzard, who puts in the 5, and the old Buzzard says, "Give him a dose of Southern hospitality."
Hey, and we will. But you know something I found out is that Southern hospitality isn't that great. We've actually been bested by the Lebanese. We actually have experienced recently Lebanese hospitality, and I gotta be honest with y'all, it really puts Southern hospitality to shame. There's really nothing even worthwhile being proud of Southern hospitality about when compared to Lebanese hospitality. But still, thank you so much once again for support, and we will make sure to let them know about that good old Southern hospitality. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ryan Peacock, who puts in the 5 and says, "Thank you for the accurate news. It's better than the TV, for sure, and they can learn from this."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for finding it worthwhile to support us and try and make sure that we can stay on air against the mainstream news networks, because unlike them, where they have ads and all that stuff, we don't. We're just sponsored directly through people like y'all. And I got to thank you so much for the support and enjoying it, because you're helping us through your support to keep it on air. And we thank everyone who goes out of their way to support this channel, because it's the only way we make this thing possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a 5 and says, "Any regret?" He says, "Any regret on saying?" Let's see. I'm not sure about this one. This one, Psyops be looking sketchy out here. I'm gonna send it to you over Discord and see what you think.
Well, I'll pop it up in front of everyone on Discord. Is there any way you could send it over text?
Yes, I can actually.
All right, we'll be waiting for that, and so I'll filibuster until we get that through. And let's see here.
Filibustering is against the house rules.
Oh man, let's see. And Psyops said, "Any regret on saying half-cocked when I'm here?" Nah, not at all, Psyops. Not at all. We're not panicked at all. And also, it's great to have you here tonight, and thank you so much for supporting the channel and helping us keep this thing running. What are you laughing at?
I think you've been had. But anyway.
Oh no, I know what it meant. I was just kidding around. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in the 5 and says, "Take a live chat question."
Hey!
And we shall, CK, and thank you very much for the support. And the live chat question is going to go to Still Thinking, who says, "Have we seen the M1 Abrams in combat?"
We have not seen the M1 Abrams in combat. However, we have seen it in action somewhere in the northern part of the front lines from what we've seen. Well, in action, I mean, assigned to a unit, but we haven't seen it in action per se. So, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, CK Bold, and supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, because it means a lot, and it's the only way we can make this thing possible. I say that a lot, but I hope people understand it's only y'all that make this thing possible, and if y'all don't support the channel, we aren't able to keep this thing running. So with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Barry Woodward, who says, "Enforcer, ID as a 35-year-old Prez 2024.
And can you reread that one again?
He says, "ID as a 35-year-old president 2024.
Hey, and do you know what that means?
Let's see, ID. I guess you gotta show your ID.
All right. Well, I will try. If you're talking about me, I'll give it a shot. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, and make sure to vote for me in 2040, because while I'm just, having a thing tonight, I hope that I will be doing pretty well in 2040 while I continuously be bombarded with text messages. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. Oh, this is a bot. I thought for a minute there was a Russian with some sense, but I read it and I was like, oh, never mind. The good fella is a bad fella. Get the hell out, bot. But anyways, we have a $2 super chat from LSA Sergeant Figment once again. It says, type in Lake Eola, and it is in downtown. And Sarge, I got to tell you, we would tonight, but we are running so late. We still got to get some live chat questions as well. Remind me tomorrow. I assure you, we will pull it up before we end the stream tomorrow night. But we have to get to sleep tonight on time because of the exam. But Enforcer, what say you?
We'll take a look at it real quick because he's insistent on it. I don't want to, just leave him hanging high and dry, because I bet we probably wouldn't get to it tomorrow. So let me make sure to pull it up, and let's go take a look at it. And there it is. There it is. Where in the world is that? That is like smack dab in the middle of Orlando, like no joke. So let's take a look. Dude, this is in the middle of the city. And let's drop down here. Oh, this is really nice. Wow, that is
very nice. Very nice.
Very nice. Very nice. This is sadly all we will be able to look at it for tonight, but I do hope that you enjoyed this, LSA Sergeant Figment, and thank you so much for showing us your favorite fishing hole. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for making this channel possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one is actually going to our live chat questions. And first up, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, all I saw was Mark Hodges, but someone might pop up saying I missed it, so let me know if I did. But Mark Hodges said tonight's Morse reads, Russia can't put it together, Ukraine will hold in Avdiivka. Long live the LSA, Slav Ukraine, Slav Israel, Slav LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message to the night. And I got to congratulate y'all so much once again for making sure to get that Morse code message correct, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't know what I typed in for that Morse code message. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our live chats. Due to time reasons, I know I said we would go on until about 10:15 or so, but, that's probably not going to be possible because I got to manage everything else in the background. So we are going to only be able to address about 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to have to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And this one goes to JB, who says, do you feel that lasting the cold this winter is vital for the orcs to keep in the war?
I have a feeling it is, because the winter could be detrimental for them, or it could just pass over like the last one where it isn't really that big of a deal. If they don't survive winter, if they do poorly at surviving winter, they'll probably do very poorly next year. We may actually see this war coming to an end by the next year, if that's the case. If not, and they manage to survive it okay, this war may go on well past next year. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for asking. A great question. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Dark Warrior, who says, how dangerous would a collapse of Russia really be?
Not that dangerous to me. It would be like the collapse of the Soviet Union. That wasn't inherently dangerous at all. It was just a bit of a political and diplomatic reshuffling of the former Soviet Union into what it is now. So I would feel like it wouldn't be that bad. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Magic Forest, who says, why are the politicians stalling on Ukraine aid, and are they trying to give what Ukraine desperately needs to Israel?
It looks like some of them are trying to do that. I don't know why, because it makes no sense. But some of them are attempting to do that. Others are just kind of trying to use the moment to stop support to Ukraine just for their own reasons. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why any of them are doing what they're doing in regards of not supporting Ukraine at the moment, because it's going against U.S. strategic interests inherent within Eastern Europe. So a little odd, but with that, I hope that does address that the best I can without getting into politics, because we don't really want to touch on that kind of stuff. But it is the end of the night stream. Very early, only a 2-hour long one, but I hope y'all enjoyed it nevertheless. If y'all did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and also hit the like button. And make sure to join us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, as we're going to be covering the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. We got to get this exam out of the way, but in the meantime, Slava Ukraine, Slava Israel, and long live the Lee Spring Army. Peace.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.